Hey everybody, it's Dr. Stephen, and can you believe it's week 4 already in our class? And well, you'll notice I'm in my kitchen. More about that in just a moment. So, a couple housekeeping things. First, I hope you were able to get your reflection paper in. I've already been reading and grading a number of them, and I think a few of you might have had some difficulty getting it in. Please reach out to me. As I said before, I'm a grace guy. I want everyone to succeed. And quite honestly, if you need a few extra days, please reach out to me. I would rather you turn it in late, and maybe we have to take a few points off because it's late, but that's a far better grade than not turning one in. So please communicate with me. Let's make this work, okay? This week, we've got our readings in both the Grudem text and my friend Glenn Powell's book. And along with that, I've got one more video of an interview. It's the third interview with Glenn. Didn't you enjoy the second interview about the study Bibles? That was just great. This week, in the third interview, he deals with community engagement of the Bible and how to bring Bible reading together with other people. And I think you're going to be really fascinated by it. He talks about a reader's edition of the Bible, which some of you have already referenced in our discussion posts. So I think you're going to enjoy it. Maybe the Lord might even be leading you to kind of reach out and start something like this in your own church or faith community. And I would be excited to hear how that works for you. Okay, so today we're reflecting on those issues that the Grudem text readings this week will deal with, which are the reliability of the Old and New Testament manuscripts. By manuscripts, we mean those original documents, probably on papyrus or sheepskin or something like that. You know, you've seen pictures of them and what have you. And we always talk about the original manuscripts, but I have to tell you something, and I'm always amazed that a lot of folks don't know this. No original manuscripts of the Bible exist. And we don't know when the last ones did exist. We simply don't know. So all we have ever had for hundreds and hundreds of years are copies of manuscripts. And you'll hear people talk about the earliest manuscripts and the King James Version being the most accurate because it's based on the oldest complete manuscript of the Old and New Testament scriptures. Well, I'd like to graciously push back on that just a little bit. And I don't think it's an issue with anybody. The King James is great. But I want to explain just a little bit about that. The King James is based on a collection of Old and New Testament manuscripts that were complete, and it's called the Textus Receptus, which is Latin for the received text. The problem is, it's not that new. It's several hundred years after the events of the New Testament happened by the time this one complete manuscript showed up, okay? And since the King James was published in 1611, so in over 400 years, there have been not just thousands. I think the New Testament alone, there are 26 or 27,000 fragments and large and medium-sized portions of manuscripts of the New Testament. Then in the 1940s, that amazing discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls came about, where those documents, those manuscripts were found in those clay urns deep in that cave in the Middle East by a little shepherd boy. It took them decades to safely get them out and not destroy them. And an enormous amount of work went in. I have to tell you, I of course wasn't alive during that time, but from what I have read and scholars have said was that there were a lot of nervous theologians wondering if these much older Old Testament manuscripts would agree or be consistent with what we currently had at that time as we would read our New Testament. What they found was an amazing correlation. It was, the consistency was remarkable. And so something else happened with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that is the science of how to collect and piece together ancient manuscripts really developed. And so it's become a real science where they actually set them side by side and they even overlay all these different manuscripts, portions. And so I'm showing a few pictures you'll see, which is just fascinating from the Dead Sea Scrolls. The one I have to laugh at is this picture with a guy dedicated and looking at these thousands years old manuscripts with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. What if it would have fallen? But that was probably in the early 1950s, and I guess they didn't worry about those kinds of things. Well, I want to do a demonstration today that I think will just help you understand how reliable these collections of fragments really is. So bear with me. I'm going to get a few things, and we're going to do a little show and tell. Okay, so my kitchen has now been transformed into a ancient Bible manuscript library and laboratory, really. And so we're going to have a little experiment. And so I've got here some very ancient pieces and fragments. They look a lot like wax paper, but we'll just pretend that they're papyrus and they're about 2,000 years old. And I'm going to try to make some sense out of them. And some of these are very old, they've been burned and torn. And so I'm just going to set it down here. And you can see how you just start laying them out, and think about doing this 1,000 times, not just 1 or 2 times. But then you start overlaying some of these. And I think you can probably see where I'm going with this. But, we look, here's a very small one. You got to make sure it's not backwards or whatever. And, so you have to be an expert in the language. And we see this one here. This one, it adds a new couple of words here. That's helpful. Okay. And then we find another one, I don't know what they used with the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I'm going to use tape because I think that makes it just a little more stable. And then I got one here that's got quite a lot of stuff on it. So I line it up. And then I'm going to do one more similar area. It's got just a few more words. And boy, next thing you know, of course we can read it. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son." And so that's essentially what they have done thousands and thousands of times over. The point of this whole little demonstration, of course, is to show you how reliable our scriptures are today. There are essentially 2 kinds of translations. It's a philosophy of translation. One is called transliteration, or word for word, which means they try as hard as they can to just follow the original languages as best they can in the translated language, in our case, English. The challenge with that is, of course, Greek and Hebrew are very different than English. So sometimes it can sound a little choppy or a little overly formal. Translations like the Revised Standard Version, the New American Standard Version, the English Standard Version are all transliteration versions, or word for word. The other theory or philosophy of translating is what's called dynamic equivalence, or thought for thought translations. That's the New International Version, the New Living Translation, and some of those, where they're really trying to make sure that the original message is understood in the dynamic context of the culture and the language today in which it's being translated. What I recommend for students, and I have for years, is when you're studying the Bible. Now, that's different than reading, just as Glenn Powell's been talking. Remember, he said, read first, study second, which is wonderful advice. But when you are studying, I would have one of each. I would have a good transliteration or word for word translation. I use the English Standard Version, the ESV, but there are other great ones. And one really good thought for thought. The New Living Translation is very good. The Common English Bible, the NIV is a classic. That's a thought for thought translation. And you can throw in the King James. You're welcome to. If you like 1611 Old English, great. I think the King James is wonderful for things like the Psalms in particular. But that gives you a more full understanding of the scripture itself. Now, I want to just talk very briefly at the very end here just about why you can trust these folks. I know a few Bible scholars that have been part of translations. I actually have a couple of friends who were part of the New International Version Translation Committee and still serve on that. And I know someone who was on the editorial committee for the translation, the English Standard Version, the ESV translation. And these folks are so brilliant in the biblical languages, in New Testament Greek, Old Testament Hebrew, and Old Testament Aramaic. I'm not a scholar like that. Now, I've got a couple books here, and I'll just open one up and show you. This is my Hebrew text. It's not very, it's got English next to it, which is helpful for me because I'll be perfectly candid with you. Hebrew and I didn't get along real well, and in seminary, I had to take a certain number of credit hours in biblical languages, but I only took 4 credit hours, 1 class in Hebrew, and I took 12 graduate credit hours in Greek, a whole year. Every Tuesday night, including summer, for an entire year, for 3 hours, I was studying Greek. This is my Greek text, and the one I used all through seminary, and as you can see, it's just all Greek. But these scholars are truly experts, and you can trust those translations. You really, really can. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you know you can trust the Bible, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the discussion posts.